Nima Rajan, and welcome to Northwest Newsweek. It's a murder case out of Fort Frances that's reminiscent to the Elizabeth Wettlaufer murders in southern Ontario. OPP say a 2015 suspicious death of an elderly woman at the hospital in that community is now considered a murder, and a former nurse has been arrested. 34-year-old Lindsay Coyle of Fort Frances has been charged with second-degree murder, breach of trust, and theft, among other offenses. The death occurred during her time as a registered practical nurse at the Lavendre Hospital in Fort Frances. 76-year-old Hermina Fletcher was found deceased on January 4th of 2015. Police initially investigated the death as being suspicious after receiving information from the hospital. Police had also looked into an alleged theft from that victim from that time. Fletcher's death was reviewed by the Office of the Chief Coroner, and now, 3.5 years later, an arrest has been made. OPP were asked about the similarities to the Wettlaufer case.
These are two completely different cases. Again, this is an ongoing investigation, and we'll release more information as we continue on.
Coyle was most recently working at a law office in Fort Frances. She's being held in custody pending a bail hearing. Just over 1 year ago, 28-year-old Henry Stone Arnold of Dryden disappeared. And after a lengthy search, his remains were discovered just west of that community. On Thursday, the Ontario Provincial Police held a news conference in Dryden to update the public on the case, which they now consider a murder. And they are announcing a $50,000 reward to help solve it. Adam Riley was there, and he files this report.
Less than a year after launching an investigation into the death of 28-year-old Henry Stone Arnold, the OPP are reaching out once again for the public's assistance.
We believe there is someone in or from this community who has the information that we need to bring this case to a successful resolution for Henry's family.
So far, the OPP have determined that Stone Arnold was last seen alive on August 8, 2018 at the Husky gas station in Dryden. The next day, his truck, a white four-door Dodge Ram pickup, was located abandoned on a property on Jonasson Road, just off of Highway 594. It was then he was declared missing and a full air and ground search was initiated. Sadly, 8 days later,
OPP officers located what they believe were human remains on a private property on Triss Road in the town of Dryden. At that time, the missing person investigation became a suspicious death investigation.
Pathologists transported the remains to Toronto and conducted a post-mortem where they were positively identified as those of Henry Stone Arnold.
As a result of the findings of the post-mortem examination and the evidence collected during the police investigation, it became clear that Henry Stone Arnold was murdered. During this process, it also became clear that Henry's remains were intentionally damaged after his death.
When asked if there was a possible connection between a drug possession arrest in Sioux Lookout involving Stone Arnold, where Xanax and methamphetamine were seized just 10 days prior to his disappearance, Haida was unable to confirm a connection.
Well, Henry's background, of course, has been examined by the investigators, and at this point I can't comment on that.
So there are no suspects at this time?
Well, categorizing somebody as a suspect involves an evaluation of the evidence, and to do that, that's something that I'm not able to do at this point with the media.
Haida says a dedicated tip line for the investigation into the murder of Henry Stone Arnold has been set up in hopes of generating new leads in the case. And he adds a $50,000 reward is being offered for any information that leads to an arrest.
Every tip, every piece of evidence, every piece of information is rigorously followed up.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
The August-long weekend turned out to be a deadly few days on area highways as OPP responded to a pair of fatal car crashes. The first one happened on Highway 17 in Oxdrift, about 20 kilometers west of Dryden. Officers responded just after 3 o'clock on Sunday morning. Police say a westbound vehicle left the highway and rolled into the north ditch, killing the male driver. OPP now confirmed that the man was from Quebec, but his identity has still not been released. The second fatal accident occurred early Tuesday morning on Highway 17, about 30 kilometers south of Wawa. That crash also involved a single vehicle, which left the roadway and struck a rock cut. One passenger in the vehicle was pronounced dead at the scene, and the other 3 occupants were not injured. The highway was reopened after a lengthy closure. It was a terrifying experience for passengers on a Kenora transit bus after the vehicle was struck by a train. The collision happened at around 10 o'clock Thursday morning at the Government Road intersection in Keewatin. Details are scarce at this time, but most of the damage occurred to the rear end of the bus. City of Kenora officials say, fortunately, none of the passengers were injured and everyone is safe. Kenora Transit is operated by First Student Canada through a contract agreement, and the driver was a First Student employee. The city is now working closely with the company, emergency services, and CP Rail to ensure this type of incident doesn't happen again. Ontario's Community Services Minister met with Thunder Bay parents of autistic children on Wednesday to make sure he has the perspective of those affected by the disorder. Todd Smith's visit comes after significant backlash to the Ford government's previous autism plan. The newly appointed minister is making several stops in Northern Ontario to meet families. Corey Nordstrom reports.
A room full of concerned parents and service providers had their voices heard by the man in charge of implementing Ontario's next autism program. Much backlash came with the province's previous plans for autism supports. Todd Smith, the Minister of Children, Communities and Social Services, says they wanted to make sure the $600 million plan they roll out next April doesn't need another redesign.
This is a program that will have to be sustainable. We don't want to be back here a year or 2 from now developing another program. So that's why we're taking the time now to make sure that this panel gets the recommendations to us so we can get it right once and for all.
The comments made by those in the room will be taken to a panel of experts that are going to put their knowledge into crafting the next autism program, which will be needs-based rather than one based on a family's income and a child's age. Anne Antonucci has a 7-year-old with autism. She says the old approach, which gave funding to parents and slashed funding to support organizations, left her and others without a place to bring their kids for necessary help.
When you have a child with autism, you can't just hire the girl down the street to come and take care of them. You have to have somebody who has specialized care and specialized knowledge, and that can get pricey. And also, we just don't have the capacity of the service providers here for that.
One of the things that I've heard loud and clear is that there just isn't the capacity in Northwestern Ontario right now when it comes to those who are providing the treatment. So, if it comes to providing some incentives to people to come to Northwestern Ontario, to commit to staying here for a period of time, to ensuring that kids get the treatment, that's something that the panel and our team will have to look at.
Child and Community Resources Executive Director Sherry Fournier says the province's first round of cuts really hurt their organization, which already covers a range from the Manitoba border to Wawa.
We have a huge responsibility to serve 1,200 children that are spread across a vast geography, different ages. Some towns have a very small population, others have large groups of children that we can work with doing different group treatments and so on.
Smith asked Fournier to be the head voice for ongoing talks to make sure the next autism program meets the needs of families from the Northwest. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
Northwestern Ontario has been given the green light for a 3rd cannabis retail outlet. Thunder Bay and Kenora have already been selected for 1 store each in the fall, and now there's one coming to the Fort Frances area. The Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario announced this week that Couchiching First Nation is one of 8 Indigenous communities selected for approval to open a marijuana dispensary. The second round of private storefront allocations by the Ford government included 42 more pot stores in municipalities, as well as 8 in First Nation communities. The Wausau store is listed as the applicant for the Couchiching Pot Shop. In order to receive approval, applicants had to include a letter of support from the Band Council of the community where they want their storefront to be located. The AGCO began accepting First Nation applications on July 31st and awarded the 8 licenses on a first-come, first-served basis. Ontario Provincial Police in Kenora have arrested 5 people during a traffic stop in the city's north end last week. The traffic stop stems from an investigation which included members of the OPP's Organized Crime Bureau. Officers seized $24,000 of suspected crystal meth, $3,000 in Canadian currency, a firearm, and drug trafficking items. A Winnipeg man, 2 women from Sioux Lookout, a man from Kenora, and a woman from Dryden all face various charges related to the seizure and were in Kenora bail court. When we come back, archaeologists from Parks Canada go under the waves of Lake Superior to explore and catalog several of the shipwrecks along the North Shore. Every year, divers descend into the depths of Lake Superior to explore the many shipwrecks from the past century or more. Now, a team from Parks Canada is looking to properly map out and explore the wrecks located between the Sleeping Giant and Terrace Bay in the National Marine Conservation Area. And as Adam Riley reports, the research team is just beginning to scratch the surface.
They sit at the bottom of Lake Superior, frozen like a snapshot in time. Many of these shipwrecks were close calls for mariners, and some are the final resting place for others. These are the shipwrecks of Lake Superior, and several are part of a long-term survey mission in the new Lake Superior National Marine Conservation Area by Parks Canada. Charles Dagno is an underwater archaeologist with Parks Canada. He says the team has managed to survey several wrecks, which includes the Gunilda, a yacht which sank in 1911.
We managed to get good side scan sonar images on 4 sites so far. This helped to understand the shipwrecks, the surrounding of them, but also acquire very precise positioning on all of these hulls.
The Gunilda is very special, according to Dagno, as it sits 300 feet below the surface and is remarkably well preserved for a 108-year-old vessel. It has also claimed the lives of 2 divers. Dagno says neither he nor his team have done any dives this year.
We learned the area. We didn't want to throw our boat on a rock. A lot of the charting in the area is not exactly up to date, so there are hidden rocks. So learning the area, learning the locals, and then doing side scan sonar on some wrecks.
In addition to the Gunilda, there are more than 30 other wrecks within the boundaries of the NMCA, including Canadian Pacific Railway locomotive number 694, which derailed into the lake in 1910, a year before the Gunilda, and was finally discovered in 2016. Daigneault says his team did make an attempt to scan the wreck.
And the research wasn't successful, but these are all part of the local history, and if they're important to understand the maritime landscape and the history of the area, then we'll consider them for sure.
Daigneault and his team are no longer in the region as they've been retasked to an expedition to the HMS Terror and Erebus in the Arctic. But this isn't the end. Both he and the survey team will be back over the next several years, cataloging the wrecks. Adam Riley, TBT News.
As Kenora grapples with the imminent closure of the city's only homeless shelter, several residents in Fort Frances are looking to help those who live on the street in that community. A program started last year in Thunder Bay, which aims to provide food and other supplies to the less fortunate, has spread, and as Carmen Wong reports, it's caught on in a big way.
Residents in Fort Frances might start noticing these little houses popping up on properties around the community. These blessing boxes house food and other supplies for the less fortunate. Blessing boxes are the brainchild of Ashley Burton from Giant Hearts, who started the Blessing Box program in Thunder Bay. She says she posted on social media about bringing the boxes to Fort Frances and has been overwhelmed by the response.
I didn't expect it to take off like this and so fast, and the community wants it, the community needs it, and so we came down to help.
Surprisingly, there are several barriers that prevent access to food banks or other food-based social assistance programs, which Burton says blessing boxes eliminate by being both anonymous and accessible 24/7.
Some people may deal with anxiety, not want to, or may not have ID, may not be able to go to a food bank. They might just need something in between checks or in a pinch, and they can just find one in their neighborhood and take what they need.
Garrett Rivelin's wife responded to Burton's post, offering up their front lawn to host a box, and he even offered up his skills to construct 3 of them. He says it doesn't take long to build them, but there are few complications.
I work a week and a week at a remote mine site, so I get 5 days home, and I don't have a garage, so I have to rely on good weather. But if everything runs smoothly, I can put one together within 3 days.
Rivelin adds he's happy to build the boxes and see them help vulnerable members of the community, including the homeless. Kathy Foy works with the United Native Friendship Center in Fort Frances. She says homelessness isn't just a big city issue.
There are a lot of people that could be considered, homeless. There's people that are couch surfing. There's people that don't, have a natural residence or are sleeping in tents in the summer and they're freezing in the winter. So there is a huge homeless population here. There's great organizations, so we're one of many that are, trying to come in and do whatever we can.
A long-term goal for the blessing boxes is to get them into other communities in the region, including Sioux Lookout, Kenora, and Dryden. Carmen Wong, TBT News.
OPP in Dryden had their hands full this week with an intoxicated driver on a lawn tractor. In a tweet from the OPP's Northwest Region account, police say they stopped a man driving down an unnamed road on a lawn tractor and charged him with impaired driving. Now, less than 24 hours later, police pulled the same man on the same lawn tractor with another impaired driving charge. No further details have been posted or released. And coming up after the break, Terrace Bay's Drag Fest has been a staple of North Shore racing for 2 decades, and our cameras were able to be on the drag stripe once again for all the action and excitement. Terrace Bay was the place to be on the North Shore this weekend for the 2019 Superior Classics Drag Fest. The three-day event featured fun and excitement for all in attendance, including Adam Riley, who caught up with some of the racers and organizers of the high-octane event.
What does it take to strap yourself into a vehicle fueled by alcohol and go rocketing down the runway at the Terrace Bay Airport at speeds of almost 185 miles per hour? Well, if you're Todd Bruce, the driver of Vanishing Warrior and a 26-year veteran of the Midwest Wild Bunch, it starts by practically living at the racetrack. For the last 5 years, he and the rest of the Wild Bunch have been coming to Terrace Bay's Drag Fest and wowing spectators. He says driving on the airstrip takes a little getting used to.
It's a little different than, your basic NHRA style tracks and stuff like that, but when you're going down the track, they all feel the same. It's pretty comparable. I mean, sometimes it could be better, sometimes it could be worse, so we just try to make the best we can with it. If it's not quite the good, we just tune the car down a little bit.
In addition to the alcohol fuel source, one way to get to these speeds is with the track itself. Dragfest organizer Dan Riley explains what he and his fellow race fans did to the track in hopes of breaking some land speed records this year.
We ground the track on the concrete area, stripped off the rubber, reground the track to a polished finish, and spent a bunch of money, filled all the cracks further down right past the start line, or past the finish line.
For Riley, this is all a labor of love and camaraderie. While there are other racetracks in the region, such as the Mosquito Raceway, the Lake of the Woods Speedway, and the Emo Speedway, Dragfest stands apart as it is the only event of its kind in northwestern Ontario, which is what brings the fans back year after year.
You meet a lot of people and you gain a lot of friendship over the years. The people have been very kind to our area. There's no other drag strip in northern Ontario, so it's been good for the community. And I like to talk to all the people that come and race.
Now in its 21st year, the Terrace Bay Drag Fest brings hundreds of people to the small North Shore town. Mayor Jody Davis says almost everyone from the community comes out to take in the sights and sounds or help out in some way.
Lots of volunteers out here to help make it work. We have professionals from the drag community that help organize and run it, and our local car club that is the host of the whole thing, so it's a wonderful event.
And as Dragfest 2019 comes to a close, one thing is certain for all the racers, attendees, and organizers. The countdown is on until Dragfest 2020. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Electric vehicle charging stations are on the rise across the country, and 2 more are now under construction in this region. The Petro-Canada stations on Dawson Road and in Nipigon are adding charging ports as part of a nationwide initiative. And local car dealerships, which offer electric cars, say that the Northwest is slowly evolving to serve those types of vehicles. Corey Nordstrom has more.
A new electric vehicle charging station opening up at the Petro-Canada on Dawson Road will bring the total up to 10 in the Thunder Bay area. And there have been other ones popping up around the past few years, including this one at the Scotiabank on Hewitson Street. Ty Alderdice is a sales consultant at Halfway Motors Nissan, which sells the fully electric Nissan Leaf. He says added infrastructure is needed with more buyers opting for electric.
The electric car industry in Thunder Bay has grown quite a bit. It's not nearly as big as what a combustible engine would offer, but it's getting stronger.
Both Halfway Motors Nissan and Thunder Bay Mitsubishi now have charging stations available at their dealerships. Mitsubishi General Manager Jeff Whitteluck says with more charging stations popping up around the city, he thinks more people will want to go green.
It is 100% more viable. I'm surprised actually these vehicles haven't caught on even stronger than they have already. The customers, a lot of them want to save money on fuel. It seems fuel prices are constantly going up, but there's an environmental impact on it too. And people want the environment to be strong and they want it to get better, not keep getting worse.
The Petro-Canada charging station will be in operation in a few weeks' time, and another one is being set up in Nipigon.
So the one that is going to be on Dawson Road and the one at the Keg, those are level 2 and level 3 chargers. The consumer at home will have a level 2 charger in their home and will charge their vehicle anywhere between 6 to 12 hours. And the one at the level 3 will charge your vehicle to 80% in as little as 20 minutes.
The company is looking to be the first business to offer electric charging stations nationwide. Corey Nordstrom, TVT News.
For the second straight year, Waverly Park set the stage for a concert for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. The outdoor event honors Indigenous lives that were tragically lost due to suspicious circumstances.
Tonight, the jukebox playing that old tune about the wild side of life.
10 musical groups and soloists performed, and several local organizations were included in the event. Sharon Johnson started the concert last year in memory of her sister, Sandra, who was found dead in Thunder Bay 27 years ago. She also organizes 2 memorial walks throughout the year, but says this particular event has a special connection with her sister.
My little sister, she loved her music, and that's part of the reason why I did this too, right? In her memory. So she really loved her music. She was learning how to play drums when we lost her. It's pretty much for the same reason why we do the memorial walks, and that's to continue to raise awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and not only women and girls, but men and boys also.
And that'll do it for Northwest Newsweek. Take care, everyone.